everybody, it's Jamie from Lemon Rebellion, and we're here today to talk to Whitney Raver. Welcome, Whitney.
Thank you.
She's going to tell us her story about how she went from homeless high school dropout to congressional candidate, and that title is super interesting. Whitney, thanks for being here, and we can't wait to hear your story. Tell us, where does it all begin?
Well, it probably began a little bit before dropping out of high school. I was the oldest of 5 children, the only mixed child in my family, and my mother and I didn't have a very close connection. She was actually not very happy that I was around most of the time. But I was fully convinced that I had this great future ahead of me, despite being extremely poor, despite living in the housing project in Southwest San Antonio. And one night I was wearing a box of baby wipes, one of my sister's baby wipes, on my head because I believed that I needed to have excellent posture to be prepared for my future. And my mom said, "Who do you think you are?" And I said, "It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is who I'm going to be." And I really think, like, I lost that for a bit along the way, but I really think that that really is where it all began, that faith that I was in complete control.
Wow, that's amazing. How old were you when you came to that moment?
That had to have been about halfway, maybe the end of first grade.
Wow, that's awesome.
And so it would have been my first grade teacher who really inspired that and made me believe it.
That's amazing. Tell us more. What happened?
So then a few years later, when my stepdad got sick and couldn't work, my mother left the family, and I was called into my counselor's office one day. This was first semester in high school, and she said to me, "Your mother called. It sounds like you're in a difficult position." And again, she and I hadn't gotten along very well. And I told her, I've been taking care of my family, off and on for years since Dad got sick. Mother comes and goes. I can handle this. And long story short, she took me out of all of my gifted classes, all of my programs, and sent me back to class. And instead of going back, I walked out. And I dropped out of high school, and I spent the afternoon wandering around Colorado Springs, where I lived at the time, trying to figure out who I was going to be if I wasn't in school. That was my entire identity, was high achieving academic.
Yeah.
And without that, who was I going to be? And I decided to run away. So I went home. It was late that night. It was cold, fall weather in Colorado Springs. And I dumped out my backpack on my bed and started thinking, what is a runaway going to need on the road? And my baby sister, she shuddered in her playpen. She shared a room with me at that point because she was so little. My stepdad had fallen asleep with my brother on the couch. The TV was still on. There were dishes piled up in the kitchen. My 2 middle sisters fell asleep in the room that they shared. But there's my baby sister, and I didn't even know that she was in the room. It was dark in there, and when I looked down at her, I saw that she was in nothing but a diaper, and she was cold, and that she had cried herself to sleep. And my thoughts shifted, and it became more, who am I going to be? Or better yet, who is she going to be with a lifetime of falling asleep alone like this? And who am I going to be if I leave her? And that was the moment that I decided that I can do both. I can live in honor, which to me means being there for those who need you.
Wow.
And forge the path that I want. So I dropped out of high school and took care of my family, mostly cleaning bathrooms and things until I was old enough for my first job. But I spent all of my extra time at the library. I self-taught, and I ended up graduating from the School of Public Health at Indiana University.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
And my baby sister graduated high school and is now very happily engaged, and just everybody ended up being successful.
Well, it sounds like your decision there didn't just influence your life, but it influenced all these people around you.
It's,
Wow.
I mean, I think it saved lives.
It sounds like it. That's incredible. I'm getting emotional. Wow. Wow, that must have been such a hard decision in that moment. You were so young. What do you think, gave you that clarity?
Um, I'm kind of, actually, probably my grandpa. So my stepdad's father was just amazing. And he, when I was little, convinced me that Morgana Le Fay, the Queen of the Fairies, was my real mom.
Oh, oh, so sweet.
But he taught me things like honor, and honor is my cardinal value. And again, to me, honor means um, standing strong in your commitment to those who need you.
Yeah.
And as my cardinal value, that means that I don't just fight for others. I also have to set an example for others.
Wow, yeah.
So it was the last time that making a decision was difficult, I feel, because after that, anything becomes possible when you create your own boundaries, and my boundaries are forged by my values.
Wow, that's incredible. You in the notes that we shared before about what we're going to talk about today, you said the second chapter is called "The Path Doesn't Exist: How I held on to my dreams and made them happen my way." Tell us more about that.
Right. So I left conventional education, but my secondary value is growth. So I continue to homeschool myself. I continue to exhibit the importance of education to my brother and sisters.
Yeah.
And I was able to go forward by doing things unconventionally, like forming relationships with university professors and auditing classes and things.
Tell us how. I'm curious. How did you create the space for that? How did you do it with all the responsibilities you were taking on at home with your brothers and sisters too?
And so that was later on. Once Mary, my youngest sister, was old enough for school, a lot of new opportunities opened up, and absolutely took advantage of them by reaching out. You'd be amazed at how easy it is to form a relationship with a professor when you're as curious as I've always been.
Yeah.
They love to talk about their research. So that
Awesome.
part was actually really easy.
Awesome.
And so it's just a matter of connecting with people.
That's awesome. Well, I'm sure they could feel I can feel it through the screen. I'm sure anyone listening can feel it as well. Just the kind of person you are and the character that you have. It sounds like there's so much integrity and authenticity in how you try to show up in life and live those values, because they're obviously influencing the decisions you've made at these key kind of points in your life. And won't let anything get you down. I can sense that about you.
It's true, but I did have a period there. I had to navigate puberty and trauma and all of those things relatively on my own. And so part of forging that path on your own for me was really sitting in anger and figuring out how to find people who could help me find the space between anger and passion.
Yeah.
And that took a very long time.
How did you find it? What were the things that influenced you or helped you turn anger into passion?
Well, one of them was Taoism. When I tried to go back to high school after Mary started going to school, I went to a school called Creative Arts High School in St. Paul, Minnesota. And one of the people there, he was Buddhist, and he taught us tea and meditation and things. And I learned something really, really important. I was a fighter, and I say that honor is one of my cardinal values, and it absolutely is. But early on, I believed that protecting others in most cases meant fighting. And through Taoism, I learned that part of that is simply because I am so kinesthetic. And most of what I do and feel also has to come through my body. So meeting him at that school helped me figure out, the difference between my thoughts and thinking passions and how my body wanted to represent those things. And it got me a lot more cerebral and a lot more connected.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's really interesting. And did you end up following the principles of Taoism in life? Is that something that stuck with you, or just something that came
I
in
still
for a
do.
moment to teach your lesson?
Nope, that's something that I still follow and I still meditate on. And it's really wonderful because it evolves with you, and it's something that you can revisit all the time because it's new every time. And
Hmm.
there's always something important in it. But what comes out of any of the meditations or thinkings or anything like that is different for every stage. So how I viewed and what I needed as a 16, 17-year-old and what I needed at 25, 26 after years of therapy and growth and becoming a mother and entering a relationship with my husband and my best friend was completely different.
Yeah. I'm curious, just I hope someone else that's listening is curious about the same thing, because I'm going to ask a question. How do you integrate that practice kind of into your life? Or how has that integration of that practice evolved over time?
Funny enough, I like to read in the morning right before I get into my shower because the hot running water really helps me think. It keeps my body occupied
Mhm.
when I need to think. Otherwise, I like to meditate while doing Tai Chi or studying any of the other martial arts or by also teaching my children. But I
Interesting.
find that to integrate, I really need to be moving as well or have some kind of physical stimulant as well.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. I know I can. It can be, there are days when it's excruciating to just sit and clear your mind and meditate. And supposedly they
Mm-hmm.
say if you have a hard time meditating for 2 minutes, that means you need to meditate for 2 hours. No. But the moving meditation, I agree. I also find it a bit more easy to get into, or I feel more connected to it, I suppose, as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you're teaching your kids some of these practices?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so fun to talk to any of them because we're an attachment family, which means that I hold my babies till they can walk and then they run away. But we're also a high independence family. So even my 3-year-old will participate in making her own meals at lunchtime. She makes the messiest peanut butter sandwiches of all time. Um, but thinking is a major practice. We homeschool right now, and so thinking and meditating, and as well as kids do,
Yeah.
and reflecting on different aspects of, say, the I Ching is a regular practice for us.
Now it makes sense at a new level why, as you mentioned before, your kids are studying Japanese. Is there some motivation that connected to this practice?
Yes, well, we started with Mandarin, and this is kind of funny. My 3-year-old loves Mandarin. My 9-year-old loves Japanese, and my 5-year-old prefers German. So
I love it. Your household is extremely colorful with languages then and learning.
yes, it's a little bit wild, but we are all able to connect on the kanji, which is the shared characters between Chinese and Japanese.
Interesting. Okay. That's really cool. Um, let's talk about the third chapter. You've named it here, Rewriting the Script, How I Challenged Everything and Became the Wife, Mother, and Self I Would Have Admired as a Teen.
Yeah. Um, I am very happy to say that if I showed up to me at 16, I would be very happy to meet me.
That's beautiful.
I was so angry, and I felt, um, I felt used and ugly and you name it. And so I anchored so much of my worth in my sacrifice, which, sacrifice when it's warranted can be a very beautiful thing, but it can't override your divinity
Yeah.
or the value of yourself. And it took, at first I saw a trauma therapist, somebody who spent most of her career helping combat vets um, come into themselves after all of the. I was a full adult, and my husband, then my boyfriend, moved into a house together. We invested in our first house, and I finally got into Indiana University, which it took a lot of maneuvering to do.
Congrats.
But
Yeah.
for some reason, that's when I broke down and I started having blackouts and
Wow.
just post-traumatic blackouts and anxiety attacks. And one day I woke up, and I have no idea how long I'd been there, on the floor of the bathroom at a Walmart
Wow.
after a massive anxiety attack. And so for years, I worked on working through things that I had shoved down to become functional. And by peeling back all of those layers and coming into myself and taking all of these things and learning from them and being able to openly attach to everything, both the people who hurt me, the people who I could have been better for, and people who are still struggling, without having to feel defensive or without having to feel protective. Or one of the worst things is a lot of people become successful and they look back and they think, well, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I have preserved my spirituality, and I've preserved my sense of honor, and I've preserved my ability to fight for those who need someone,
Yeah.
right, without feeling like I need to sacrifice myself
Yeah.
in order to have value.
Mm-hmm. That's really beautiful. I think there's a big lesson there, isn't there, for women in general, but when we feel like we have to give ourselves away to our family, to our community, to save, just try and even save the people that maybe have hurt us, and then we lose touch, like you said, with our own divinity. That's a line we probably don't need to cross, because then more damage is done than good, I think, overall.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm very impacted by what you say, by your story. I'm both inspired and just touched by how sensitive and your spirit is, and how much you clearly have this huge, big heart, and how consequent you seem to have been in your own life, just to be true to yourself and these core values that you've identified, and seems like you've held on to in the midst of so many challenges. I hope that anyone that listens feels inspired by that, and feels like they can reflect on their own values too, and see how to continue to be faithful to those and show up in powerful ways. Yeah, those are my thoughts. I feel like I want to ask another question or two, but Whitney, what do you think? What do you think, if someone that's listened to your story and inevitably is going to feel super inspired and touched by what you've shared, what would be that one nugget of wisdom, or that you'd like to share with them if they feel like it's resonated with them in one way or another in their own lives?
Oh, I would tell anyone that you are divinely inspired, and there is no description, there is no story, there are no boundaries to what you were put here to achieve. So don't look outward for a path. The path, the path will be created in your wake. Just forge forward, and that will push us all forward in a way we've never imagined.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome. That's very powerful. Thank you so much for, I'm super touched. Anyway, I just thank you so much for sharing your story. You've got your little beautiful baby girl there. No doubt.
Oh yeah, she's
a great mama with a heart full of love and compassion and wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm gonna, I guess we'll say goodbye for now, but thank you for your time today and thank you for sharing with us.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Oh, we can't hear you. I don't know what happened.
Oh no.
It's late. It's okay. I don't know what happened with it, but that's okay. We'll just wave goodbye. Thank you again, Whitney Raver. A pleasure, a real pleasure talking with you. And thank you again for your authenticity and your vulnerability and the inspiring story you shared with us today.